Let's talk about the world processes in 2020, the year of the metal rat. I already told you that the metal rat is related to prosperity for military industries, for various new technologies. In ancient Chinese texts, this year is called destruction of a wall. Earth destroys wall. So, we will be able to observe how borders become increasingly obsolete. People start communicating more. They will try to mix and mingle. In many spheres of business, culture, and sports, the difference between the states will disappear. Maybe even the nationalist movements will downshift to a lower level. On the other hand, there will be discontent all around the world. There will be revolts because of oppression of people. People will change something about the way they think, and they will tear down the borders that government and authorities had built. We will witness it in America as well as in Asia. The year hasn't begun yet, it's only January. But we can see what's going on in India. Several months prior to the metal rat, disagreement and heated protests began. So, the current geopolitical setting. Most of the key events will happen in Russia, Africa, and India. Will there be a unification of the Arab countries this year? Not this year, but within the following 5 years, we will be witnessing this. This will be another large state formation that will appear in geopolitics, and it will unify various Arab countries. How will Egypt and Ethiopia conflict get settled? Readiness to be obedient, difficulties with building the dam, and Egypt will need perseverance. I started with Africa because in 2020 it will be the most eventful place. How will Egypt develop? The beginning of a revival, power and respect, salvation from evil, a dramatic change. In relationship with Israel, the conflict continues. With Turkey, first reaching an agreement, then failure, which will hurt the Turkish side. Development of Maghreb countries. Growth, onset of military activities. People will migrate to prosperous countries. Happiness is in self-reliance and reserved ways. Qatar, progress but changes. United Arab Emirates. Relationships, trust, and profit. Loss of base and foundation, of groundwork. Oman. Conflict and conflict resolution. Yemen. Prosperity, consolidation, growth, and beginning of the economic progress. Lebanon. Bloom and balance. Luck for the people will be gained by keeping within limits. Policy of neutrality. Syria. Obtaining a stance, possibly continued explosions, fire in the skies, people fleeing. There is a state that harms the blessed land. What will happen in India in 2020? A breakthrough in conflict resolution. However, disarray will continue until April. It will be controlled by the military men. Discontent of the people will be pacified economically. It means that maybe the Muslim community will give a money reward and the law will be reviewed. Finally, everything that happens will lead to India's prosperity. Will a very recent law adopted in India lead to a civil war? The law about immigrants of Hindu and Buddhist origin from Pakistan and Bangladesh can easily obtain Indian citizenship. Discontent blew up because the Muslims got ignored and overlooked. So, Muslim immigrants will have to leave the country. Also, people not bearing documents but having Pakistani descent, parents or grandparents, will have to leave the country too.
но их родители, бабушки или дедушки выходцы из Пакистана.
The Muslims
Мусульмане
protest. There is a
протестуют,
lot of
очень
discontent.
много недовольства,
Students from all
народу,
cities
студенты во
flood the
всех
streets,
городах, и
and
до
this
сих пор
conflict is not
конфликт не
settled yet.
урегулирован. В
These
следующем
conflict
году,
situations will
до лета,
continue
еще
until the
будут
summer.
продолжаться конфликтные ситуации.
I was
Меня
worried whether
беспокоило,
a civil
начнется
war
ли
would begin,
гражданская война,
because for
потому
a
что для
country's
страны,
economy, its
ее
development
экономики,
and
развития,
prosperity,
процветания,
the civil
гражданская
war is
война,
perhaps
наверное,
the
самое
scariest
страшное,
thing that
что
can
может
happen.
произойти. Нет,
There will
но
be
тем
no
не
civil
менее
war,
власть будет для
but law
подавления
enforcement will
вспышек
be used
недовольства.
to
Это
mitigate the
действие возникло
outbursts
в
of
связи с
discontent.
невежественными советами.
This
Была
happened
потрачена
because of
репутация в
ignorant
некоторых
advice.
международных
The
группах,
country's
после чего
reputation
правительство
at
начнет
certain international
прислушиваться к
groups will be
позитивным
lost,
людям.
and
Это
then
действие
the government will
истощает
want to
страну или
start to
было
listen to what
организовано
positive people say.
внешними
Those actions exhaust the
советчиками.
country.
Что
It was
будет происходить
organized
в
by
штате Кашмир,
outside
который с
advisors.
лета
What will
находится
happen
в
in the state of
изоляции,
Kashmir that
если
has been in
вы следите
isolation
за тем,
since the
что
summer?
происходит
If
в
you
мире, вы
follow the
знаете,
news,
что
you
в
know that in
сентябре
September, military action
возникли
and
военные
common
действия
grudge
и
in Kashmir
недовольство в
grew,
штате Кашмир.
and all
Это
this was
все было
blocked by the Indian
блокировано
military man.
индийскими военными. Но
Such information
информация
usually
обычно не
stays within the
выходит за
country
пределы страны,
and is not
но в
known
связи с
beyond.
этим
These
трафик
things
интернета
caused
только
internet traffic
ухудшился,
worsening.
мобильный
The
интернет
mobile
стал
internet
совсем
became
плохой,
really bad
а в
and
связи с
its
последними
operation is still
событиями в
not
Дели до сих
restored in
пор не
Delhi
восстановлен.
due to the recent events. This
Конфликт не
conflict
решится. В
will not
следующем
be
году
settled next
отношения
year.
Индия-Пакистан,
India and Pakistan
противостояние не
controversy
достигнет
will not be resolved,
завершенности, но
but there
будут
will be mutually
взаимовыгодные
beneficial
экономические
economic
соглашения.
agreements.
Отношения
Indian-Chinese
Индии и
relations
Китая.
are not simple
Отношения
right
Индии
now.
и
We
Китая
are
сейчас
talking not
не
about the
просты. Мы
economy,
сейчас говорим
but
не об
about the
экономике,
geopolitics
а
now.
об геополитике.
China
Китай
is taking over regions that surround
завоевывает
India.
регионы, которые окружают
China wants the
Индию.
power
Китай
over
хочет
the Bay
добиться
of Bengal,
власти в
where India
Бенгальском
is the leader
проливе, в котором
nowadays.
сейчас лидирует Индия. И
China wants to
оказывать
influence the
большое
neighbors of
влияние
this
на
large state,
соседей
India. China
этого
tries to
большого
complicate things
государства
for India
Индия.
and
Китай
always gets
стремится
involved at
доставлять
times when
Индии
things become
различные проблемы,
unstable in
но всегда
India.
это делает тогда, когда вспыхивает недовольство на территории Индии.
That's why
Поэтому
I was
мне было
wondering,
интересно,
what
что
would
в
happen to
2020
India-China
году по
relationship in
соотношению
2020?
Индия-Китай. Разорение,
Impoverishment,
потеря
financial
финансов и
loss, and loss
ресурсов.
of resources.
Китай будет
China
пытаться
will try to
пересечь
cross
северные
northern Indian
индийские
borders.
границы. Индия и
India and
Непал.
Nepal.
Непал всегда
Непал was
находился
always
под
under
донышком
India's wing.
Индии. Индия
India
снабжала
supplied it
Непал
with energy
энергией и
and
различными
various other
другими
necessary commodities.
необходимыми продуктами.
Nepal
Непал
complains
жалуется, что
about
Индия не очень
India's
корректно повела
indecent
себя
behavior
в тот
when they
момент,
most
когда
needed
они
it
особо
during the
нуждались во время
earthquake.
землетрясения. И
Nepalese
правительство
government is now
Непала
fully
сейчас
controlled by
полностью
the
находится во
Maoists,
власти
so
маоистов.
influenced by
Происходит
Chinese
влияние
policies,
китайской
which, of course, makes
политики,
India very unhappy,
что вызывает, конечно,
especially the
большое
western
неудовольство,
regions.
особенно западных регионов. Китай
China tries to get to the
пытается
northern borders of India from the
продвинуться к
Nepalese
северным границам
side.
Индии со стороны Непала.
What will
Что будет
happen to
происходить во
Indian-Nepalese
взаимоотношениях
relations?
Индии и Непала?
Counteraction,
Противостояние, но потом
but later an
соглашение.
agreement. The Chinese will
Однозначно
definitely
китайцы
try
будут
to
пытаться
cross the
пересечь
northern borders in
границы
2020.
северные в 2020 году.
I asked
Еще
once
раз я
again
переспросила,
whether in
будут ли в
2020 the
2020
Chinese
году
would
действия со
fight for
стороны
construction of a
Китая
large port
бороться за
in the Bay of
строительство
Bengal.
крупного порта в
The answer
Бенгальском
is
проливе? Да.
yes.
Роль
Russia's role in
России в
these
этих
relations.
взаимоотношениях, несмотря на
Although
то,
on
что
the surface,
внешне
Russia seems
Россия
friendly towards
якобы
India,
дружественно относится
Russia,
к
in
Индии,
fact,
но
helps
Россия
China weaken
помогает
India
Китаю
by
ослаблять
supporting
Индию,
Pakistan and
поддерживая Пакистан,
organizing civil
организуя
unrest in
гражданское
Kashmir.
беспокойство в Кашмире.
China
Китай
in
в
2020.
2020 году. 120
120
лет
years
назад
ago, at the same
в
year,
такой
the
же
year
год,
of
год
metal rat,
металлической
there was
кризиса,
huge expansion over
была
China,
большая
a
экспансия
political
Китая,
situation when China
ситуация
went under
политическая,
control
когда
of
Китай
foreign
попал
countries
под
and Chinese
власть
valuables
иностранных
were
государств,
transported
и
outwards.
ценности Китая были вывезены. Что
What
будет
will happen on
происходить
the
в
same
такой же
year,
год
the year
металлической
of metal
кризиса
rat?
сейчас?
Now, China
Китай
will
будет
face
сталкиваться со
difficulties.
сложностями. В
The
первой
first half of
половине
the
года
year will
денежные
bring
потери
financial loss
из-за
because of political
внешнеполитических
mistakes,
ошибок, но
but
потом
later,
выравнивание.
everything will get
Внешнее
settled.
давление
Outside
рождает
pressure
потери,
brings
смена
loss, change of
стратегии.
strategy. In economy, there is loss of resources for progress, strengthening of power and reputation, conquering outside resources, increased influence in other countries will lead to inner exhaustion. One shouldn't use riots and disturbances. Inner policy of continuity and modesty. Geopolitics. Continuous strategy of expanding the influence. Building seaports all around the world. Expansion of influence over water areas. Mistakes in foreign policy. In Russian-Chinese relationships, there is trust, but it's a controlled trust. Depletion of resources. China-Africa. There is a wait-and-see approach, filtering across the border, silting in difficulties in the relationship. Africa is not very happy about having China over there. However, China will be proactive in Central Asia. In former Soviet republics, there will be profit and glory. China in Siberia, a step up in scales, excess in usage, distribution of something false, deception and difficulties. China and Europe. Improvement of relations, lucrative contracts, and stability. China-America need to make concessions and certain sacrifices to keep the big things. America creates obstacles to China's international strategies. What are the China's strategies? We know that these people usually think 100, 150 years ahead. So what are their strategies now? What's going on in the new technologies? Mostly, the development happens in biology and genetics, in the military and in metallurgy. After fixing the mistakes, discoveries will happen. The army, intensive development and power boost for the army, especially in Air Force. It will be used for surveillance and military offensives. Next, in 5 to 8 years, comes the Navy. Biological weapons, space. Space-related things will develop well for China. But this will be the conflict point with Russia. Mining resource development. Pretty moderate inside the country, only external energy resources will do. Medical sphere, depletion, lack of financial inflow, and conflict. Ecology. For the sake of its reputation, China will finally start to take measures to balance up its ecology. Science. Attracting brain power from all over the world. Industries. Lots of inaccuracies. That's why the development happens not as quickly as it could have. Destinies of Nepal. In exchange for loss of influence, they will receive financial assistance. Foreigners affect their politics. Beginning of development. No harm. Tensions in valley areas where people will come together for protest movements. An armed standoff is possible, but it will not be the peak. Destinies of Thailand. Exhaustion and depletion by external forces. Fortification of authorities and reputation losses, no way out. Japan, middle way and softness, unification with other countries of the same family, transformations and a desire to get back what had been taken away from them, more aggressive foreign policies, similarity to a leopard, blossoming economy, external forces will harm their stability. European Union. Disruption of the EU will slowly continue, strict surveillance will establish, but so far no country will exit. Euro currency is stable. The refugee problem will exacerbate. Refugees increase in numbers and they get settled around, occupying more territories. Soft power, loss of control and exhaustion of resources. The Europeans will migrate to other countries, where life is cheaper, with more freedom and more opportunities for self-actualization. The birth rate problem becomes catastrophic. Germany in 2020. Trust to the community they are part of. Belief that they are right. There is an enemy who doesn't manifest himself yet. Loss in June, prosperity, exacerbated immigrant problems, drop in birth rate. German banks experience problems and impoverishment, but they will find a way out thanks to their external friends. Blossom of economy. France, adherence to rules that leads to problems. Limitations come from outside, which starts affecting the internal orders. External factors determine the policy. It seems that favor has turned their back on them. The profit that came from outside will stay with the top-level people, leaving common citizens the same, not enriching them. Profit from promoting others' energy resources. Probably this means profit if the French help settle the issue of transporting the Russian gas, but it's only a promise, although it will change the vector of policy. As soon as the French receive what they wanted, they will denounce their promises. Mistakes in domestic policy. Italy, they will experience laws that are similar to punishments, but later progress will come. Happiness in hardening and stiffening, changes in foreign policies, change of partners, difficulties in Western regions, changes in domestic policies. Greece is experiencing transformation. Obstacles in development are determined by the external powers. Money and resources manifest. No natural disasters. There is dissolution under the pressure of external powers. Aggression from Turkey. Netherlands will face standoff and riots, which will have to be stopped by force, perhaps in inner circles. Profit through water paths. Loss of energy. Punishing economic actions from outside. Belgium, everything is stable. A slight loss of influence because of extended connections with the indecent ones. Natural disasters because of fire. Finland, economic educational process. Acceptance and stability. Profit through timber. Loss through water and a strong partner. England, in order to receive more, they will have to sacrifice something small. Loss in means and power, but aggregation in resources and strengthening. They will maintain their supervisory functions. It will move towards its peak. Finance comes through waterways and through correct international connections. Czech Republic, economic strengthening, policy of observation, conflict because of loss of market and finances. Business management will become more complicated. Poland, first half of the year will bring loss due to wrong political moves, loss of outlet market for agricultural produce, maybe because of an illness. Money comes through transporting cargoes through the country and the seaport. Cyprus, fixing the old-time conflict, strengthening of flow through the water. Israel, decline, loss of influence, profit through agriculture. Banks try to influence politics, loss of property or fragmentation. Mistakes in foreign policy will require sacrifices. USA. Continuation of the same policy. Trump will not leave early. This impeachment thing is a theater. In economy, stricter measures and enthusiasm, and using the army. In foreign policy, fixing the situation and strengthening sea connections with Asia. Loss of energy through energy resources will lead to a discovery. In domestic policy, there is a return, control over actions. With Russia, the situation will change all the time. There is no stability in relationships. USA is becoming more aggressive in geopolitics, blossoming, confidence, sacrificing through influence on sea. Hardening of domestic policy, increased complication in running business, control and fixating. Tougher stance on getting migrant flow in order. Migrants will grow in numbers. The conflict with Mexico is getting settled. Canada, changes. Mexico, strengthening and movement towards development. Brazil, ignorance is blossoming. This country is used for resources only. No prerequisites for change. Argentina, humility and no willpower of their own, strengthening of outside influence. Chile, decline and ignorance. There is no power for change. Cuba, massive change after spring. Australia, prosperity, loss of large trade partners, but obtaining new financial opportunities and connections, probable natural disasters related to dust storms and wind. New Zealand, changes, transformation, increase of popularity. The climate is getting warmer and influences the ecosystem. World tendencies in science. Everything is developing for military purposes. This year will not witness discovery of alternative type of fuel, but the Americans will have good scientific build-up for that. In space sphere, countries team up for that for profit, but there are no directions of action. Medical sphere, there is an impulse for a new direction. Education, deterioration and downfall. Unfortunately, spread of marijuana will happen worldwide, 50-50. The key world problem is that everyone is expecting a change in energy market layout pending change of influence and balance of powers. Generally, my wish to you for this year is the following. Please be forgiving, peaceful. Don't get involved in any public massive processes and try to think about what's going on in your own families. I wish you peace and prosperity.